Next up, Murfreesboro Storytellers. Our guests this month are presidents of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, Ralph Vaughn, Steve Benefield, and the present president, Paul Latture III. Stay tuned. Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. This month we're originating our program from the lobby of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, 3050 Medical Center Parkway in Murfreesboro. The Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce has been very significant in the growth and development, the history of our community, and we thought it would be well to talk about that and what this organization has meant to us. So we have three of the past directors, if you will, executive director or president of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, to talk about it from their perspective, to reminisce about what has happened during their term and what's made us such a great, strong, vibrant community. First of all, we have Ralph Vaughn, who was executive director for 12 years, came in as executive director, as I said, and then the title was changed to president. Ralph, how did that come about?
Well, it was changed, I think, about 1990, I believe, John. I came on the scene in 1986, and in 1990, we went through an accreditation with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and they recommended that we change that title from executive director to president for the professional, to put the professional on a peer-to-peer level with presidents of XYZ companies or whomever. And the top volunteer was then called chairman of the board.
And that continues till today.
Right.
Steve Benefield followed Ralph Vaughn as president of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. Steve is a native of Murray County and a graduate of MTSU and a pitcher for the Blue Raiders. Steve, what's significant about your recollection during your term as president of the Chamber?
I think the big thing, John, is just the change that occurred in general. It was already into a very, very rapid economy. Obviously, being neighbors to Metro Nashville and Davidson County obviously had a lot of bleed over into our community. And then when you put on top of it the things that were going on at Nissan and MTSU in general, and some of the focuses that we were carrying over from Ralph's leadership and the volunteers back then into what we did during my time period, and obviously going over into Paul's, it was a busy time. It was just rapid change.
And you guys sort of beat the record. The typical term of an executive is what, about 3 years?
It is. There's a national average out there, and for whatever reason, I guess they didn't figure Ralph and I out early enough, and we were able to stick around a little bit longer.
Oh, you guys did such a great job. And Paul Latture III, basically a Mississippian, a graduate of Ole Miss, and a second-generation chamber executive director. Wonderful. I did not realize that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you scared me. You said you had the three past presidents here today. I'm still the president, so fortunately,
Excuse me.
I didn't know if you knew something I did.
Thank you. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, my family's been in the chamber business in different states, and something that just kind of gets in your blood, if you will. These guys know what I'm talking about. But being involved in a chamber of commerce like the Rutherford County, it's a great opportunity to try to make a difference. And with the leadership we have here, both in the public sector and the private sector, it's a great place for someone like me to grow in their position and to make a difference.
And you've been here 4 years now, I believe.
A little, about 4.5, yes, sir.
What's a typical day for you, or is there a typical day?
Well, these guys will tell you there really isn't a typical day. It's interesting that you come in, you think you're going to do one thing, and you'll end up doing something totally different. But it just depends. And some days we may have be all dedicated toward and perhaps an economic development prospect, and of course that takes a lot of time getting ready for, or it's dealing with membership events. And so the good news is we literally get to do something different every single day, which keeps the job exciting.
How large a staff do you have now?
You know, we're right now with our office in Laverne as well as in Smyrna and some part-time, we're somewhere around the 24 employees.
No doubt one of the most significant advances the Chamber has enjoyed has been this wonderful facility from which we're originating. Steve, this was happening during your tenure, I believe, wasn't it?
We were talking before we started taping, John. It's kind of interesting. This building really has spanned all of our careers here in Rutherford County. Back early on, I know a lot of the conversation during Ralph's tenure was we needed a visitor center and an identity out on the interstate to come out of our main building downtown. And as it ultimately played out, we were able to consolidate it all into one facility and to see it go from an idea to beginning implementation, then to see it completed under Paul's direction is really neat, and it's definitely something we all should be proud of.
Absolutely. Paul, explain how the funding has come about for this building. Several sources, as I recall.
That's correct. I would say the first thing is the land was donated by Mr. Bill Gatton, and that was very, as it turned out, the piece of property works out great for plenty of parking and everything, and great visibility. So that was one piece of the puzzle there. Additionally, everything you see on the first floor is what was funded through a U.S. Transportation iced tea grant, is what they called those at the time, and so we were able to do that. So we actually, everything you see here on the first floor was federally funded through the help of our delegation in Washington at the time. And so, and finally, we did a lease and finance with the city of Murfreesboro to do the rest of it essentially, and we do have some lease income from MTSU, the Small Business Development Center. And so that just ensures kind of a myriad of different ways that we were able to, or I should say they were able to put together, because I definitely had the easiest part of the deal. I just got to cut the ribbon and break the ground on it, so I'm thankful for you guys.
Ralph, how did the idea start? I believe it began during your tenure?
Well, when I began at the Chamber, John, Paul was talking about the number of employees he has. I had one lady and a part-time lady. Okay. Our annual budget was $80,000, and that included my salary. I had made $28,000 when I first started. But we knew that Cannonsburg, we had Cannonsburg Pioneer Village, the log cabin there at the entrance, and we had a sweetheart deal with the city, $200 a month. So we had a good deal. But we saw that we had certainly outgrown that facility. But we didn't have the money to really pursue anything differently. But then when we went through accreditation, the U.S. Chamber said, you need a larger facility. So we did a space needs assessment. The ladies in the office, we tracked the number of people who came through the office, and we said, we can't continue in 1,000 square feet. And the guy at the U.S. Chamber said, well, you need to get 5,000 square feet. And we called a meeting of two leading business people, Ed Lowry Jr. and Don Moser. We met at State Farm Insurance. And with them behind it, we raised the money to construct the Chamber building on Memorial, 10,000 square feet. So we went from 1,000 feet to 10,000 square feet.
And how many square feet of this building, Paul?
About 34,000.
34,000, yeah. That's quite a remarkable achievement. Yeah. Steve, what's your fondest memory of serving as president of the Chamber during that 10 years?
Golly, John, there's a lot, but probably two, and I guess one would speak about the community in general, but one within 6 months of my arrival at the Chamber, I got a call one day from Grady Haynes, and at that point in time, the new building that Ralph alluded to earlier had not had any signage put on it.
That's the Memorial Boulevard building.
Yes, sir, that's right. And Mr. Haynes called and he said, Steve, how you doing? And talked a little bit, and he said, listen, I need you to get some signage on that building. I said, I'm continually getting people walking into Haynes Brothers Lumber and wondering where the Chamber is, and I'm directing them. I'm tired of sending them over there. You need to be grabbing these folks as they come down the road. And I said, well, Mr. Haynes, we have a plan to look into some signage, and we're going to do it. And I promise you, as soon as we get the plan in place, I'll let you know. And he said, son, you don't seem to understand. I want you to get those signs on there tomorrow. And you send me the bill and we'll take care of it. And so it just spoke to the type of folks that Paul alluded to earlier as far as the leadership and the volunteers in this community. They're always engaged and they're always proactive. And truly, at the end of the day, they're the ones that make things happen. We just help guide it a little bit, keep the train on the track, so to speak. And I guess the biggest project and one that I'm really proud of is the Yes campaign. And that was what we had to do for the referendum on the conference center and hotel over here.
Oh, yes.
And it obviously, typically people will tell you that referendums aren't a good thing to take on. You're not going to win all the time and get your way when you start opening up those type of votes. But again, as a result of the leadership of the community and the people that were involved, we were able to have a landslide, so to speak, and get it in place, and the funding was in place. And now we've got something else in the community that I think speaks really well of what's going on.
Thank you for mentioning Grady Haynes. What a wonderful community leader, father of Larry and Terry and Marlene, and Great, he did so much for this community, a lot of which many people do not know about.
Yeah, he was a leader.
He
no
was.
doubt about it.
Paul, in your 4.5 years, how's it changed in just that short period of time? Just amazing what's happening.
Well, I think probably the neatest thing I would say, or the most interesting thing, is that when I came here, the economy, the national economy as well as the global economy, was in decline. And you know, the good news is that our community, our county, although we had some pain and some suffering, were not near as bad as other places. And to see the quick recovery of how we've come so far, so quick, in a very short period of time, with you know, announcements like Amazon and most recently Schwann Cosmetics and numerous others. We've had record job growth in the last 2 or 3 years. That's really a great sign for this, not only for our county, but this entire state of Tennessee. So,
take a company like Amazon that you mentioned, from beginning to fruition of the project. How long a period of time does that typically take, and what all happens between beginning and final signature?
well, that one was a very atypical project,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be a fair assessment. They moved at light speed, and they actually, from really, I'd say about 90 days, they made a decision that they were going to put a facility here. And within 9 months, they were shipping packages out of a 1,250,000 square foot building.
That is an amazing project. It really is.
It is. It's absolutely amazing, and they're in their second year and doing quite well here.
Typically, then, it takes a much longer period of time to cultivate a company and get that final decision that they're coming here.
Well, first of all, they're all different. But this past announcement we had was with Schwann Cosmetics. That took over almost a year. Mm-hmm. And so some are in between, or some are longer. It just kind of depends on the different circumstances, what they're looking for, and how quickly they can move through their own internal site selection process.
Ralph, as I recall, one thing happened during your tenure. We were able to make a local call from Murfreesboro to Nashville, or Rutherford to Davidson County.
Right. Metro area calling. And a lot of our members came to the chamber and said, you know, we have an added expense to have a Nashville line because it was long distance. And not only was it long distance to call from Murfreesboro to Nashville, it was long distance to call from Laverne to Murfreesboro. We didn't have county seat calling at that time. So what we did, our volunteers, and I know Paul and Steve have already alluded to this, being a chamber president, you're not the star of the show. You're the supporting cast. It takes the community, and we're the cheerleaders and we're behind the scenes, but we're the facilitator. We're not the stars of the show. But we went to the public service commissioners, Keith Bissell, Steve Hewlett, and Frank Cochran, I think, were the public service commissioners at the time. And we made our plea. We took Sam Ridley with us, by the way, former mayor of Smyrna. And Steve and Sam had a great relationship because of Belmont University. I think Sam was on the board of trustees at one time, and Steve went to school at Belmont. So we had a little bit of an insight, but we talked about the idea that it was almost immoral for people in Laverne not to be able to call the county seat in Murfreesboro. And then we expanded the metro area calling idea. We said, look at Atlanta, look at Charlotte, look at the fast-growing areas of the country. Nashville, Middle Tennessee can do the same thing. And they liked our idea, but I think it was Frank Cochran who said, well, we need some political clout. Mm-hmm. To sell this legislatively, we need to have some clout. It wasn't the Nashville Chamber, but the Rutherford County Chamber. We wrote letters to every Chamber of Commerce in the metro areas, Memphis, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville, also to the county commissioners. And we said, this is something that will be good for economic development. And we collected petitions. And we took them to the Public Service Commission, and they said, we've got something now that we can validate this idea with. And we had the first ceremonial calling at the old Holiday Inn Hotel here in town. Okay. Sam Ridley made the first call from Murfreesboro to Nashville without it being a toll. We broke down the toll bridge.
A great economic feat, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you recall, Steve, about anything that you can tell us while you were president of the chamber that nobody knows about that you could share today that made a real significant impact on you during your service?
No, we were transparent, John.
You were transparent. Oh, I know you weren't keeping secrets, but I just wondered.
I don't. I think it was just a time that I guess at the end of the day, I wasn't smart enough to keep things behind the scenes. We always tried to get it out there for the community to understand and the business community to see. But I don't know. Let's come back to that. Something may hit me in a minute.
Let me rephrase the question and give it to Paul. What's the hardest thing you've had to do as president of the chamber? Most difficult thing, the biggest challenge you've had during your 4.5 years?
I would say the biggest challenge that we face today, in my opinion, is that a good situation where we have more jobs, but we don't have the people to fill those jobs. And I think that is a significant challenge that not just our community faces or our county, but that this entire country faces. And if we're going to be successful in the future, we have to get people with some type of a post-secondary education. We have 68% of our population does not have any type of post-secondary certificate or graduate program degree. So it's a challenge. And John, I tell you, it's if we're going to grow. And I think a lot of our, if not all of our issues are growth issues, which are, much rather have that than the other.
Absolutely.
So we're going to grow, and we're projected to be over 500,000 people or more by the year 2040, which is not too very far off. And so if we're going to meet those demands, we've got to figure out that system.
And what you say ties right into Governor Haslam's program in the state with 55-25 to, by 2025, have 55% of the people having at least a certificate or a bachelor's degree or some
or a two-year degree from
say like Montanil Community College.
Correct.
And I know even today the Nissans and others are having difficulty finding enough highly qualified people, and it's going to be even more difficult as the future goes on.
Correct.
Did you face similar challenges around?
Yes, sir. If I could put a postscript of what Paul said, when I first came to the chamber, Murfreesboro had 30,000 approximately. All of Rutherford County was 80,000. Now we're what, 130,000 in the city, Paul? And
about 120, yeah.
Yeah, and the county's 200 and something.
And you came out of DeKalb County to this metropolitan area.
I did, yes, sir, I did. But I find it interesting, John, not that I was prophetic, but I would go and speak to the Rotary Club or the Exchange Club, and I would say, folks, we're going to grow. And again, it wasn't because I was prophetic, but I said, we're on the interstate, we're next to Nashville, and Nashville has nowhere to grow because they were under a non-attainment at that time. They couldn't recruit manufacturing industries at that time. And I said, it's going to happen. And I find it interesting that some people would say to me, we don't want things to change. And change is hard, I know. Transitions are hard. And as diplomatically as I knew how, I would say, well, folks, and I do say this respectfully, if you don't want to grow, you might go to Smithville or you might go to Woodbury. They're not growing, but they don't have industry. They don't have rooftops. And I'm thankful that we had Joe B. Jackson as mayor, who was a visionary. John Mankin was the county executive. It's now called county mayor. They were visionary people. Sam Ridley, and later Knox Ridley. We had leadership in Rutherford County that saw the bigger picture. And it happened, despite me or whomever. It was inevitable, John. With the interstate being close to Nashville, the transportation network, it was inevitable that we were going to grow, and obviously we have.
Other than what Paul mentioned about the educational needs or educationally trained people, what other needs do we have that are significant at a particular time to satisfy those folks who are looking to our community?
Well, I think as we continue to grow, it's incumbent upon us to look at just our total infrastructure. Transportation is a huge issue, okay. Not just locally here, but also as we look at transportation from a regional standpoint. How are we going to get back and forth as a metropolitan area grows, and what modes of those transportation are are going to be the most viable and effective. You talk about back to education and talk about infrastructure. You know, we're going to have to invest in more brick and mortar for schools eventually, and as well as all of our other utility type infrastructure. So all those are key factors in, you know, as a company going to locate or expand in a community.
And we're sitting across from the avenue here in the Chamber building. I'm sure we'll see more retail growth to accommodate the people moving in.
I believe so, correct.
And housing as well. You have a tremendous housing development here in the Avenue area that will soon be open, and to meet the needs of the people coming into our community.
Yes.
Educationally, we have all the way from kindergarten to a doctoral program here in the community, so they don't have to leave to acquire any of those levels of education. What's the most fun thing you ever did when you were president or executive director of the Chamber?
Oh gosh, John. Most fun thing. Of course, like these two gentlemen, we saw some great stimulation to the economy, to the growth during that time frame. This is kind of a funny one, I guess. We always try to be complimentary of all of our members. Sure. We never wanted to discriminate against any of our members. And back years ago, Rock Haven Lodge was a member. Are they still a member?
I believe they are, yes.
They were a member of the Chamber. And of course, we allowed our Chamber members to host a business after hours if they paid the fee. And they wanted to host a business after hours, to the chagrin of some of our Chamber directors, but we did it. And everything was on the up and up. There was no embarrassment. But after that, though, I had some small business people come to me and say, thank you. You have proven that you don't discriminate. You support small business, whomever they are. So that was kind of a funny thing. At the time, you know, I had to kind of bite my tongue a little bit because I'd got some criticism. Sure. I had some Chamber members who said, I'm not sure I'm going to renew my membership because of you doing a business after hours there.
Turned out to be a positive event after all. Yeah.
Dr. Howard Kirksey, John, for whom Old Kirksey, Maine is named on MTSU campus. He was one of my ambassadors. We had a senior group of ambassadors who'd go out and do ribbon cuttings. And
as opposed to the younger group, the diplomats.
Yeah, that was kind of the forerunner to the diplomats. But Dr. Kirksey was walking along and he said, I am having so much fun. And again, everything was on the up and up. Sure. You know? Yeah. I think that was one of the funniest things. As I look back, at the time, you know, it was kind of a stress, but looking back, it was a fun thing.
Handled very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, Paul, you think of any fun thing that you recall?
I think the thing I enjoyed the most was getting out and obviously meeting and getting to know the business community, but I really enjoyed being with the mayors from all 4 municipalities and the county mayor. Every one of them had their own individual issues that they were dealing with, so it gave you a different perspective. But at that point in time, we had some great leaders in those positions, and I enjoyed working with those folks. They made a huge difference in their individual communities.
And by the way, earlier, I'm not sure whether during Ralph's tenure or not, we had, what, 3 chambers? We had Murfreesboro Chamber, the Smyrna, and the Laverne Chamber, did we not?
I can speak to that, John. When I first came on the scene, and I would speak to the civic clubs and others, they'd say, oh, that's the Murfreesboro Chamber. And I said, I beg to differ. We are a county-wide chamber. Soon after that, we met with the officials in Smyrna, and we opened an office at the City Hall. And then we met with officials in Laverne, and they allowed us to have space. And thus, we have Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and Laverne offices, and we truly are a county-wide chamber, right?
Correct.
Truly the Rutherford County Chamber.
So.
Yeah.
Paul, how about you during your 4.5 years?
Well, there's been a lot of funny things. I don't know if I could pinpoint one, but I was just going to say that you know what is so satisfactory to me as a professional in this deal is you get to look at, and when you recruit a facility to come here, whether it be manufacturing or office or what have you, you know, it's great and the hoopla that surrounds it. But when a year later, when you're able to go and walk through and see people that you've had a small contribution in their lives and being able to be economically viable, provide their families, that's just satisfactory to me, and that's what keeps me going in terms of our job and our efforts.
I've enjoyed being a part of the diplomats for several years that Ralph referred to in regard to the ambassadors, and that group has certainly made a difference, I think, in getting members and if the word is satisfying members, giving them a reason to be a member of the chamber and educating them.
Diplomats do. They're our strongest volunteer group and by far the most visible, and they're there the day a new business opens up and celebrates, and so it's just I couldn't say enough nice things about their dedication, their time, and all their efforts.
What is the size of the chamber now as far as members?
A little over 1,700 members.
Okay. Steve, what was it when you were here?
You know, I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe 1,300, somewhere in that range, maybe.
And Ralph?
When I started, we had 400, and when I left, we had 1,000.
Okay. All right. So it continues to grow over the years.
And we counted it a little bit different too. I think we may have been counting it as total membership of not only just paid accounts, but people that were involved. So there was a lot of different numbers out there, but I believe it was somewhere in that range.
What are other things the chamber does or has responsibility for here in the community that we haven't touched on, Paul?
Well, as evidence of us being here in the Visitor Center, we have we are responsible for the function of tourism and getting folks to come here, spend money, and then leave and with a good satisfaction that they had a good time here. Of course, I mentioned also the economic development function through the traditional recruitment of new companies, as well as the assisting of expanding companies that are here locally, and that's where a lot of our jobs come from. Not the majority of our jobs come from every year. As I just also mentioned, we're heavily involved now in workforce development and some of the governmental affairs area and public policy. So those kinds of things we try to keep a hand in. You
mentioned tourism. That's a significant development through the chamber, is it not?
It is. We had a $256 million economic impact number provided by the state of what that meant to our economy here locally, and that's extremely significant, where you would almost be paying another $200 on your property tax if we did not have any tourism efforts at all. So I think that's a huge number, and I think that's something that's very significant.
This program will be seen during 2014. What do you see for the next, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years for Rutherford County? Any projection, any predictions, any ideas as we close our discussion?
All of the attributes that we've described: location, close to Nashville, on the interstate, rail service here. I don't see it slowing down, John, but they probably have a better handle than I, but I don't see it slowing down very much. What do you think, Steve, Paul?
I agree, and I think the thing, if I could say, that I hope to see for the community is whether it's folks like John Hood or Ed Lowry Jr. or Terry Haynes or whomever it may be, I hope that we continue to have a group of leaders step up in the community that know what this community is about and care about it and are engaged. That if we have that going on, I think the community will be just fine at the end of the day.
You make me think of Bill Jones and the job he's done with Destination Rutherford here in the community.
Another good example.
Yeah. What do you see as the future, Paul?
Like them, I agree. I think you're going to see continued growth. I think in the next several years you may see some even continued accelerated growth. So we've got all the right ingredients to make a great run in the future, and I'm confident that we will continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, what a great community we have in which to live, raise a family, and be able to make the community even better. We have so many people, as you suggest, who have been willing to put back into the community, and that makes it great. And our growth has been steady and not erratic, if you will, and I think it's been very positive over the years, the companies we've acquired. General, we thank you for being with us today, but we thank you most of all for your service.
Thank you.
Ralph Vaughn is past Executive Director and President of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. Steve Benefield is a past President of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. And Paul Latture III, the present President of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, John.
And thank you for joining us for Murfreesboro Storytellers.